Hello, my dear students. So, after the measurement of operating exposure, the next task for any person who is dealing in foreign trade is to manage the operating exposure, just as we have done in case of transaction exposure. But you must understand one thing here, that management of operating exposure does not require the use of any mathematical formulas or mathematical techniques, just we did in case of transaction exposure, like forward market hedge or the money market hedge, netting. These were the techniques that we have done in case of transaction exposure. Here the techniques or the methods of managing the operating exposure are very much simple. The reason is that the operating exposure is concerned with the present value of future cash flows. So how can you manage your cash flows? You can manage your cash flows by concentrating on two things. One, on the basic tasks of management. So you need to effectively plan your activities, organize and to control all those activities. So you need to apply the functions or the functions of management, or you need to apply the principles of management. And the second thing is that you need the active cooperation or the participation of different departments of an organization, like the marketing department, finance department. They need to work actively. So one thing is very much clear here, that to manage the operating exposure, you need to have very good management skills. That is the reason or the basic factor which is going to contribute towards the management of operating exposure. So now let's just discuss all these methods of managing operating exposure one by one. We'll discuss all these methods by departments or the areas that are to be covered. So first one is marketing management. Marketing management, as you all know, is concerned with marketing your activities, managing the marketing area, or how skillfully can you convince your customers to buy your product. You all have done this thing, that this is a very broader concept and it starts even before the product is manufactured. So here your task is to excel in the area of marketing your product. The first one is market selection. See, exchange rate is something which is going to influence the selection of the market. If something, why are you managing your operating exposure? The question is, why are you managing your operating exposure? And the answer is that the exchange rate is not in your favor, depending on the situation, whether you are an exporter or you are an importer. The point is that it is not moving in your favor, or you expect that it might not move in your favor. So what a company which is operating in more than one countries, this is particularly I'm talking about the MNCs. What an MNC can do is that it can expand into new markets where the exchange rate could be beneficial for it. So it is concerned with expanding your market or selecting the market where you expect that the currency is going to depreciate in some other country. What will be the benefit? The benefit will be that you will acquire the resources from the local currency. I have told you that the currency is depreciating. So when you select that market, when you go into that market, all your activities will be in the local currency of that country. So this is something that you can get benefit or of a depreciating currency. So this is market selection. The basic thing is that you try to expand your geographical area. The second thing is pricing policy. Now this is something which has to be a very conscious decision, because the customer is very much sensitive about the price. Okay, so a marketer or a businessman which is dealing in foreign exchange is caught in a dilemma whether to increase the price or not to increase the price. That is a big question. So whether you are going to increase the price or whether you going to keep it at the same level, that depends upon a number of factors. And what is that? See, a change in the exchange rate has the effect of making the goods cheaper or dearer. Either of these two things is going to happen, or either your goods will become cheaper for the customer, cheaper for you, okay, or cheaper in the sense that because the exchange rate is changing, so the value of foreign currency is changing, it is going to make the things either cheaper for you or it is going to make the thing dearer for you. So now the firm is to make a choice between the market share versus the profit margin. This is not a simple thing. You have to keep certain things in mind. For example, let's take an example. In case the home currency depreciate, okay, now what is the firm facing the situation? The firm can in case the home currency depreciates, then the firm has the choice of keeping the price constant in the foreign markets, and thereby what will happen, the demand for the product will expand, and thus the market share will become competitive with the competitors. So if this is a choice or the decision of the trader whether he is going to increase the price or not. See, the currency is depreciating. Okay, now you want to increase the size of your market. So what is the wise decision? If the currency is depreciating, it will become the persons who are in other country to buy your product, it will be cheaper for them, right? So this way you can increase the size of your market, this way you can expand your market share again. So it is a choice. And the second thing is your decision as a businessman to adjust the foreign currency prices in response to exchange rate also depends upon how long the real exchange rate is expected to persist, whether you consider it as a short term phenomena, that this is something, the situation is something which is not in my favor and this is going to go, I mean it is not a long term phenomena. This could be the situation in case whether it is a long term thing or it is a short term thing. Suppose it is a short time, okay, then the preference is to keep the prices same, because you don't want to change the, or you, I would say, you don't want to disturb the customer by changing the prices. So if it is a short term criteria, then you don't want to do it. And if I take the example of a long term situation, even then, my dear students, it is not something, I won't say that it is the opposite. It depends upon the elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand could be, you have done it, it could be greater than 1, less than 1, or equal to 1. If it is greater than 1, what does it mean? It means if you are going to change the price, the demand is going to change proportionately more, that is greater than 1. Okay, now let's suppose the elasticity, the situation is like this, you have increased the price and the demand is going to decrease, the proportion of decrease in demand is going to be more. Then what would you do? You won't take the risk of increasing the price, then, because then you are going to lose your customers. Okay, so this is the situation. I mean, what I want to say is that you must take into consideration the elasticity of demand also. Now suppose if there is appreciation of the currency, you are living in India and your currency appreciate, the value of your currency appreciate as compared to some other country, then you would like to keep home currency price fixed, because obviously it is a beneficial situation for you, and then you would like to maintain your demand as well as your profit will be kept at the same level or it might increase. The second factor, very important factor in pricing policy, is the frequency of change. See, particularly in case of, I'll take the example of Indian consumer. If you ask a consumer to pay you 500 rupees for a product, okay, and if your product is very good, most of the customers, I won't say most of the customers, but yes, there would be good number of customers who would be ready to buy your product. And suppose the same thing is available at a price of, let's say, 450, right, and your product is for 500, they would be ready to buy your product if they are seeing that you are giving them some extra benefit. But if you are importing something from some foreign country and due to the changes in exchange rate, it becomes costlier for you to manufacture that product. Okay, now you increase the price maybe by 10 rupees or 20 rupees. Some of the customers would go out of the market, but yes, there would be customers. And then also you increase the price, the customers, again there would be less number of customers. But so a good decision is, if a customer is ready to pay you 500 and you are expecting that the prices might not be in your favor, it is good to keep the prices at 520 initially. It won't hurt the customer, right, because he knows that the price is 520. But frequently if you are going to change the prices for 500, 510, 20, then definitely it is going to affect your market share. Believe me, it is going to affect your market share. So pricing policy, we have done, it is going to affect you in two ways, or two major decisions are whether you are going to change the price or not, and the second thing is the frequency of the price changes. Then in marketing, Definitely, promotion is very, very important. I'll explain these 2 points simultaneously: promotional strategies and product strategy. Promotional strategy is that how well you can communicate to the customer that they must buy your product. Even if you are changing the price, even if you are making certain changes in your pricing policies, then you must communicate this change very much effectively to the customer, so that they are convinced. Okay, they should know that they are getting some extra benefit by buying your product. Okay, so then is product strategy. Another thing is, if you it is not that easy to increase the prices, you can concentrate on the product strategy. You can make certain changes in the price product of your the company, that the product that the company is manufacturing. You can change the design, or best thing is that you can indulge in research and development. So this was all about marketing strategy. The next thing is production management. You all know that this is another important area of managing or doing your business. So this is production management. The first thing that you can do here is diversify cross border operations. This is the diversification of your area. See what you are going to sell. You are going to sell whatever you have produced. Okay, so this strategy involves carrying out certain offsetting cross border operations. I'm repeating, what I said is offsetting cross border operations. Let's just take an example. Suppose if a firm is exporting goods to a foreign market. Exporting, okay, so exporting means that the firm is receiving the money. Okay, then the operating exposure that has arisen on account of change in real exchange rate. See, I'm saying that there is an operating exposure to an exporter. So what is the change here? Just think about it, whether the exchange rate has gone up or the exchange rate has gone down. Just give it a thought for 2 minutes. The risk is that the exchange rate has gone down because he is going to receive, and the risk is relating to the decrease in the earnings. Okay, so this is the situation. How can you offset it? It can be offset by going in for a certain import operation from countries whose currency is positively correlated to the country where the firm is exporting goods. So this is the offsetting situation, that if your exposure from a country is not in your favor, if the situation is not in your favor, then you go into an offsetting position with some other country. Okay, so then second is input sourcing diversified. What do you need to produce your product? What do you need to manufacture your product is the input or the material. Okay, so second option can be that you can diversify your sources of input, that is the sources of the supply, the material that you are getting from the market. So however, you need to follow this strategy very tactfully, because why the customers are buying your product? Definitely you are offering them something which is different from the product which is manufactured by others. And what is that different thing? Your material, your raw material, your inputs. And if you are going to change your source of supply so frequently, then what would happen? Two things would happen. First, it is going to hamper your relationship with your supplier, and secondly, when the customers won't get the same kind of the quality of the product which you are manufacturing would definitely differ. The customer won't get the same satisfaction, and then they are not going to buy your product. So this is what is input sources. I'm not saying that you would not follow it, you should not follow it. I'm not at all saying this. I'm saying that this has to be very careful. It is not that input sourcing has to be careful. In fact, all the decisions need to be taken very carefully, right? Then is plant location. So this can be that you can try to set up new plants in markets having low production cost, right? So in case the firm has only been exporting to foreign markets, then setting up plants in the competitors markets will allow the firm to enjoy the same gains. Same gains from what? from the exchange rate changes. Now you're going into an area where you can get the material at a lesser rate. This is something which we do in our daily life also. Suppose I have to buy something, where would I go to buy that thing? I would go to a market where I can get it at a at a lesser rate. So this is what is plant location. So this strategy gives the firm the flexibility to shift production among the plants in response to real exchange rate. So again, this is something which is easy to say than to do. Plant location is not an easy task. Then a very important task of any to manage any activity is the financial management. So you need to manage your money efficiently. This is concerned with how you're going to obtain the finances, how, in which channel you're going to manage it. So it is the effort of an international financial manager to hedge the operating exposure by denominating some of their long term debt in foreign currency so as to generate offsetting impact on the expected cash flows. This is what we have done in case of transaction exposure also, that you can go in for netting. So you can try to make some offsetting positions so that your operating exposure reduces to up to certain extent. So this was about the measurement and management of operating exposure. Now we are left with just one type of exposure, that is the translation exposure, and I'll explain it in the next lecture. Thank you.